Well, that only left us with Ethiopia, only Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is a vast country, and I think it was added, you add up all of the surface area of states on the eastern seaboard of the United States, it comes out to just about the size of Ethiopia. And we had very few people, remarkably few, and very little money. But we had a great Peace Corps contingent. And one of these is Vince Radke, who will be presenting next. Vince is a graduate from Michigan State. As he said, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with his life, and then along came Peace Corps, and they asked him if he'd like to go work on smallpox in Ethiopia, and as he said, he headed straight for the library. He didn't know what smallpox was, and he didn't know where Ethiopia was. So there were various ways of recruitment to this program, you understand. At any rate, he came in 1970 as we began the program, and we had 20 Ethiopian staff, and we had the Peace Corps. I think we had 12 or 14 with the first group. And that was our total staff. And this vast country, very little in the way of roads, and so it was one whale of a job. And then we began to get into Civil War problems. We finally wound up with Haile Selassie being assassinated. We had a Marxist government taking over. We had the Peace Corps evacuated along with everybody else, and we had the only people able to move out of Addis Ababa were people on the smallpox program. And we wound up with everything from a Russian double agent whom we had to fire to other problems that I'd rather not mention. But we had yet one more adventure. So Vince was part of that, and I now invite Vince to come. Vince has gone on from doing Ethiopia to working in Bangladesh. I think he worked down in Kenya and the final concluding certification phase, and has since, after work with state and local health departments, has wound up at CDC now in environmental health in a much more placid environment, I'm sure. Vince?
I'm going to follow Tony's lead today. I won't bother you with another PowerPoint presentation. You just have to listen to my story. Stan, I never did find that one place where I could take a leak in private. I'll have to talk to you after where that was. I missed that. Boy, it is indeed a pleasure for me to be up here today. And I want to thank Dave Sensor and Jim Lewis and their team for putting this on. You guys did a great job. The purpose of my talk this morning is to tell you about one of the last transmissions of smallpox in Bangladesh and to pass on just a few lessons that we picked up there. I'm going to divide my presentation into two parts. The first one comes from the heart. The next part comes from the heart and the head. So the first part, the heart. I owe a debt of gratitude that I cannot repay to a lot of the people that are in this auditorium today. I would not be here today if it was not for them and if it was not for some of the people that could not be here today. It was their dedication, it was their work ethic that convinced me to get into public health. For that, I thank you all very much. They are my coaches, they are my mentors, and they are my heroes. And as many of them have pointed out today, it wasn't just the people in this room or the international people, it was the national, the host country people that we worked with. Whether for me it was in Ethiopia or whether it was in Bangladesh or later on in Kenya. This would not have worked if it was not for the host country nationals. Their dedication and their work ethic, okay, put this smallpox to rest. I need to mention a group of people that, and DA talked about it. There were 14 Peace Corps volunteers before we left for Ethiopia, came here to the Centers for Disease Control in 1970. When we pulled up in that bus outside, there was the front door, we walked in, there was a reception area. She said, "Gentlemen, just have a seat, and Bill Faggy will be with you in a little bit." And we said, fine. Bill Faggy comes down the hallway, opens the door, and I looked up and I go, "Oh my God, he is big." But Bill, it was you, Don Millar, and Mike Lane, and others who trained us for 2 weeks here at CDC. By far the best training I have ever had. When we left here, we were ready to work in the smallpox program. Bill, thank you. And to Don, I know Don's here, thank you. And Mike Lane also, thank you. There is a Peace Corps volunteer that I worked with, Mark Strasberg, that I need to mention. Mark and I were sent to Kaffa province in Ethiopia. And Mark couldn't be here today, but it was his dedication, too, that helped me. But more than that, there were 2 Ethiopians that I worked with. Okay, a sanitarian, Otto Gabriel Haile Selassie, and Atumetaku Let, a dresser, that I worked with for 3.5 years in Ethiopia. And to them, another debt of gratitude, and thank you very much. One other person, then we'll move on to Bangladesh. When I got to Ethiopia, and we were introduced to the staff that was there, it was Dr. Kurt Whiteholler, and there was a Brazilian there, okay, and he said a few words to us, and I looked at him, and I looked at the other fellow Peace Corps volunteers, and I said, "Was that English?" And nobody understood what he said. You know, he was speaking English, but we didn't understand it. Well, this Brazilian, okay, was my supervisor for 3.5 years. And later on, got talking to him. He was the one that helped get rid of smallpox in Brazil. And a special debt of gratitude to him, that's Ciro de Quadros. He could not be here today. He's up in Washington, D.C. I hope to see him sometime in August. But a great man, great man. Okay, let's move on to Bangladesh. Oh, the other nice thing about being here is I look out over the faces here. In my office where I work at CDC, I'm referred to as the old guy. So when the new EIS officers come by, or the fellows and interns, you know, my fellow workers go, "Oh yeah, go see Vince, he's the old guy at the end of the hallway." So it's really nice to be up here and look around, and I'm the youngster. This is really nice. This is really great. So appreciate that. Okay, let's talk about this last transmission of smallpox in Bangladesh. Let me set the stage for you. Spring, summer, 1975, Bangladesh, Sylhet district, hot and humid. We hadn't had any reports of smallpox in a couple of weeks, you know, but we know we can't breathe easy, because when I came through when I came through New Delhi, I was told what happened in India, and the same thing was happening in Bangladesh, so you couldn't rest. And so a couple of weeks go by, and we get a report of smallpox. Okay, so we get the basic information, and what it was that somebody reported seeing a guy, a young man, had smallpox. He was on a public launch. A public launch in Bangladesh is basically a bus that travels on the water, down the rivers, meanders down the river and stops at each of the villages. And I thought to myself, oh God, we are in trouble. This is a walking case of smallpox. So we hopped in our boat and away we went. And the one thing we had going for us, we knew all the stops of that public launch. And we could go to each of those villages. So each village, and EIS officers, when I talk about shoe leather, this is it. We went to each one of those villages that launch would stop at. And what they would do in the village was take people on and off, and cargo off and on. And we would go to each one of those villages and ask if they had seen this guy. We show a picture of smallpox. Most of the time it was no. We traveled on that launch asking people as they came in and off the boat. We finally got a lead from somebody that said, oh yeah, I remember seeing this guy. He got off, okay, at this village here. We go, okay, so fine. So we go to the village and we ask around, and sure enough, the guy had been there. In fact, he had spent 2 days there. We go, great. So we find the house where he was, and he was the brother of a sister. Okay, he had come to visit his sister and his brother-in-law, okay, for a couple of days. And we asked them, we said, well, you know, did he stay very long? What did he do? And they said, yeah, he was here for a couple of days. Did you notice anything about the guy? Well, he had a few spots on his face, but, you know, we didn't think anything of it. And I go, okay, so we checked the vaccination for the mother and father, and they had been vaccinated, but their little 3-4-year-old girl was not vaccinated. In fact, when we got there, that little girl had fever. And not a bad situation. So we started the containment procedures that Stan Foster just told you about. So we left the containment team there. I went on because I still had to find this guy. So we knew from the sister where this guy had gone. So it was, I don't know, it was about 5-6 days later. My memory fades me now. But anyhow, we finally caught up with this guy. And sure enough, it was a case of smallpox. All the scabs by this time had fallen off. So every place that he stopped, he told us where he stopped, and every place we had to go back and check, and we stayed with the containment for, as Stan says, that's 6 weeks. Coming back to that little girl, it was about 2 days later, she started to develop rash. And she developed a full-blown case of smallpox. So we did our containment procedures for the required period of time. She did recover, but she was left with those scars that you saw on that slide up there from Stan Foster. And that's really hard for me and a lot of our other colleagues that I worked with to see that in a little girl, because it was, for a little girl in Bangladesh, that Stan said, it was devastating. It really was devastating. Let's see, let me catch up to myself here. Stan showed you a line listing, okay, and on that line listing, okay, we had to put date of onset and date of detection or date of discovery. Well, date of onset in the smallpox program was the onset of rash. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wait a minute, date of discovery. Well, wait a minute, I got there 2 days before the date of onset. So on my line listing, what I did is to put the date of discovery 2 days before the onset of rash. So we get back into DACA, Stan Foster's there along with the other folks, and he goes, Mr. Radke? I go, yes, Dr. Foster. He says, you must have made a mistake here. You're showing the date of discovery, you know, 2 days before the rash. I go, yeah, that's right. I found the case. It was in the fever stage. He goes, well, you know the definition. Here's another lesson for EIS officers. Well, yeah, but maybe you need to change the definition. So, but he won the argument later on, so we went back to put the date of discovery as the date of onset of rash. And here's another lesson. It's sometimes difficult to measure some of the health programs that we are with, but one thing you can do with some of the diseases is look for that date of feedback. Okay, thanks. You look at the date of the onset of illness, whatever that is, and you look at the date that you detected. And if you can shrink that down from weeks to days, you're getting ahead of the disease. You may still have the number of cases, but that's a measurement that you can use. And we use it today in the work that I do in foodborne illness. We try to get that date of onset. We try to get that detection as soon as possible. It's not always working, but that's what we're shooting for. That's a measurement of how we can do it. Time up, yeah. One final conclusion. I didn't realize it at the time, but that little girl was my last case of smallpox that I would ever see. Thank you.